The High Noon Hot Seat is brought to you by High Noon Podcast. Catch us live at twitch.tv/High Noon Podcast. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the High Noon Hot Seat, brought to you by High Noon Podcast. I am your host, The Blevins. With me, as always, is Deathblow. What's up, buddy?
Not too much.
And joining us today, we are honored to have the coach for the Florida Mayhem, Mineral. What's up, man? Thank you for coming on.
Thanks for having me, guys. How's it going?
It is going well, and we're gonna go as fast as we can through this because you have been gracious enough to come on at like 1,000,000 o'clock at night your time, so we appreciate that. We'll
yeah, don't worry about it.
We'll hopefully get you back on sometime when you're in the States, so it'll be a little bit easier on you. But yeah.
If any large people corner you down at an away game or something like that in season 2,
Yeah.
it might be us.
Yeah.
Okay.
If two large bearded men approach you, it's probably us. Although it might not be, so please run for your life. Just run for your life both ways. But enough tangents. Let's just get right into it. And we'll start this off how we always do. And Mineral, tell us a little bit about what your gaming origin story is. What got you into gaming?
Well, I mean, I've really played ever since I was like a little kid. Like I remember like my first gaming memory is like not even me playing. I was probably like 2 or 3 years old, and like I remember I was forcing as a kid my mom, because I was too scared to play Doom, but I was forcing my mom to play it, and I was sitting in her lap like watching her play. So that was like my first gaming memory. But I mean, I've been a gamer like all my life. I played like a bunch of shooters. I played a bunch of different stuff. Competitively, I really only played Team Fortress 2, like at a high level. I guess a funny story is I've been a teammate for a relatively long time with Taimu in TF2. So yeah, I was in a bunch of teams with him. Then I quit kind of gaming altogether for a little while. I went to university. Picked up League of Legends there for a little bit, played a little more TF2, then I just was like very on and off with games, like going through periods where I'm like, okay, I need to focus on my career, but then I still have this itch to play something. And then obviously I just found Overwatch at a period in my life where I thought like you know, I had the luxury to already have an education to really be able to afford to like step aside and try and like give it a shot to go pro, because immediately when I saw the game, I saw a scenario where I could turn pro because I have like a skill set from TF2 of 5 years where like the skill. I mean, you see a lot of TF2 pros still in the Overwatch scene, so I saw how my skill set from there could translate, and yeah, and now I'm here.
Nice. So it was just kind of love at first sight. It was like, oh, Overwatch is the next step from TF2. Yep. That's awesome. We're really glad that you didn't get sucked into League of Legends like many of us have in the past.
I spent a lot of hours playing that game, which I'm not very proud of.
Yeah, no, I think most people of our generation have had that same that many countless sleepless nights playing League of Legends.
Yeah.
Back in the day. But obviously now you are the coach for an Overwatch League team. So we've been asking people who are, you know, maybe not players, but in the Overwatch League or surrounded, how much do you actually get to play Overwatch now? You know, obviously that it's your job, and what's your personal SR?
Well, I get to play a little bit, not nearly as much, and I've never really liked ranked. You know, always because I've always played kind of the shot calling role, right? So I try to spend more time like scouting opposition, learning about the game more than actually practicing mechanics. But I do play a little bit. I think last season I played probably like 25 hours. The season before I played 100 hours, but I was still playing actively. So last season I played maybe 26 hours on my main, and my peak last season I think was 4,515, and I like dropped out of. I think I needed like one game to like secure top 500 on the last day of ranked, and I lost it, and then I tried to pick it back, and then, yeah, so I finished probably like 4.3k something, but I was like hovering between 4.4 and 4.5 like most of the season.
Not too shabby, I gotta say, for quote not playing as much as you would want to.
Or a washed-up coach.
Yeah. Yeah, you're just a hair. You're 503rd place out of top 500, and that's washed up. No, that's extremely impressive, nonetheless.
Speaking of washed-up coaches, I'm in a similar situation that you're in, considering
Hold on.
stepping
Similar,
down.
what's
Similar
your
in
peak?
the sense that
What's
I'm
your
going to
peak
stop
that-
playing. I'm going to stop playing and go to coaching, and not similar in the stake and the the skill of the players. But what made you decide to step down from playing and move into coaching?
Well, honestly, I mean, it's something that I always knew that I had to do. Even like when I was studying at university, I always was the type of guy who like loved to teach people stuff. Like if I feel like I master something, I love like talking about it and try and teach stuff. And I feel like there was one moment when I was it was shortly after I joined Luminosity, where I remember, like, I don't remember which team it was. It was like a tier 2 team that asked me to sub for like a map. I subbed, and then I asked to like stay on and watch their scrim. Just to give them feedback. So I stayed, watched 1 or 2 maps, and just found myself like taking notes, asked those guys if they wanted any feedback. They said yes. Then I, for like 10 minutes, gave them a bunch of feedback, and they were like, wow, this is awesome. This is exactly what we needed. And then like, I think at that point I kind of realized that, okay, this is definitely something I think I could be really good at, and something I'm going to probably move into when I retire as a player.
Perfect. Well, thanks for the insight there. But I do want to shift the conversation a little more closely to the actual organization, the Florida Mayhem, that you're a part of for season 1 here. And can you describe your roles and your duties within the organization at this time?
Well, I'm the head coach, and I'm currently like the only one on the coaching staff, so I'm pretty much handling everything like in-game related. Anything out of the game related, we have managers and stuff. But yeah, everything from scouting the opposition, game preparation, working with the guys one-on-one. If someone needs to like polish their mechanics with a particular hero, I'm going to go through their VODs, kind of help them with that, and just like sit in on every scrim block, go through the VODs if needed, and just like direct the practice, I guess. I always give tidbits of feedback to the guys between halves, between maps, like things we need to focus on, so that we go into each practice with like a sense of direction and something that we're actively going to be working on. So I guess like that's kind of what I do and what my role is right now.
Perfect. And here on this show, we've been kind of fascinated with the team's brandings, their names, their logos, and all that stuff. When was it that you got to see the name and the logo for the Florida Mayhem? And did you get to have any input? Were you involved in the decision-making process there, or narrowing things down at all?
No, I wasn't involved at all, but I think I saw like the leaked logo. I think there was like some leaks on Reddit where, because like people were all over those like trademarks. So I kind of saw like
you're welcome. You're welcome.
Right. So yeah, I was like, that's like when I first saw like the logo, and I thought, well, that looks pretty neat. But like the branding itself, I think I saw the jerseys and the logo, probably a week or 2 before it was official. And yeah, I think it's like the branding is really good. I really like it.
Yeah, it's definitely one of my favorite logos, and like the name is great too. Just the Mayhem. I mean, we talked about. I mean, before we saw Outlaws, there was really like everything. All the names were kind of like very prim and proper and good, and then there's Mayhem, and it's like, okay, that can actually cause some destruction, which is awesome.
Yeah.
So moving on a little bit, this is a two-tiered question. So, who do you see as your biggest rivals in the league, and who do you think is going to be your toughest competition in the league?
All right, let's see. Let's pull up the list of teams here. Honestly, like in terms of rivalries, it's difficult to say because, like, I don't think there's supposed to be like regional rivalries, right? Like if you have 2 New York teams, like they're obviously going to be rivals just because. The LA teams are obviously going to be rivals just because. I'm not really sure geographically who would be our rival.
You guys are kind of off down in the south,
yeah,
just kind of hanging out.
Exactly. I think when like the map gets filled out with more teams, I think that's going to be easier to answer. In terms of like our toughest competition, I feel like the easiest answers would be the top 4 that kind of everyone thinks about is the 3 Korean teams, so London, New York, and Seoul, and then Dallas Fuel as well. I think that those teams are probably going to be the hardest to play against, especially in Seoul. I mean, that lineup looks insane.
Yeah, for sure. Any bit of old time rivalry with a former teammate in Taimu, or
call him out? I mean, do it here.
Yeah.
No, I mean, obviously,
fire the shots.
There's probably going to be rivalry there because we have a European core and they have a lot of European players as well, so it's probably going to be a little bit special playing against them. And I have a lot of friends there as well. I mean, I know Harry from TF2. I know Coco as well from TF2. So yeah, I mean, it's going to be a little bit special playing against them because they're good friends. So yeah, that's going to be a fun matchup.
Yeah, I mean, right now, most of the players and staff in the league all comes from the same place, right? Like we all, you guys all started the Overwatch esports as we know it. So there's really it's not like people came from different parts. I mean, people came from different parts of the world, but there was still one kind of united Overwatch esports front. So it's not like, people don't know each other right now. I mean, we're so early on, so
yeah.
But so in terms of picking up new players and building out the roster, and maybe even in deciding on the current roster, how much of a say do you personally as the coach have in that? And is there a general manager or anyone else that's in on those decisions?
Yeah, I mean, we have management in place for all of that. I mean, generally for this particular roster, I didn't actively partake in the building of the roster because that was like negotiations myself. But like in the future, obviously, I'm gonna be consulting with them and making sure that the players that we do bring in are actually players that I feel like are gonna fit into the team. Ideally in the future, I'd like to work with like an 8 to 9 man roster, and I think it's gonna be very important that the players that we bring in are not only mechanically gifted, because I mean there's a lot of players like that, but that they bring more than that to the table, so they're not just like mechanical beasts, but then they don't really fit culturally with the team, and so they detract like in another department. I think that those are going to be very important things that I'll need to consult the management on, because it's very easy for someone who isn't working with the guys every single day to go, oh, this guy is absolutely amazing, we need to pick him up, and then if I mean, yeah, like the front is I don't know. I mean, he's super skilled. I mean, if he wants to be in the Overwatch League, he'll be in Overwatch League. But yeah, I mean, in general, it's just like you have to consider the culture of the team, because for me, like that's the most important thing. Like in establishing consistency, you see, like an example I'd like to bring up is like the San Antonio Spurs, right? Like no team in the NBA has established as much consistency throughout like a 20-year period as that team, and that's because it's kind of thing you sign for the Spurs. It's a kind of an unwritten understanding that when you're going through that door, you're checking out the ego at the door. It's all about the team. You trust the coaching staff that's been there and that's proven that they're going to take the team to the highest level. So I'm very big on that. So in the future, it's something I'm going to be a part of for sure.
That's awesome. And you mentioned kind of ideally you want to be working with maybe an 8, 9, even 10 man roster. Right now, all we've seen is the 6, and there's been a lot of talk about that, especially in our Discord about 6 is kind of where I think the only roster. Correct me if I'm wrong, Death. The only roster we've seen that's only has 6 right now. Can you
believe that's right? Shed
a little bit of light on the decision for that? Is there something we don't know about in terms of people getting picked up later on, or was it just a conscientious decision to just run with 6 initially?
Well, again, I wasn't like part of the recruitment process, and I know I've heard some names were like being thrown around, but I wasn't like actively part of any of those kind of negotiations or discussions, because I was in negotiations myself.
Right.
So I think it's something that organization is certainly going to look into addressing during the mid-season. obviously right in the season with 6, and there's been legitimate concerns because if someone gets sick, then what do you do? So there's obviously an inherent risk. But again, like it's something that management is probably going to look into during the mixed mid-season, I guess, transfer window or whatever you would call it.
Gotcha. Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, but that being said, I think the player, because I've seen a lot of as soon as like all the lineups were announced, like you saw all the fans making their own power rankings on Reddit and things like that, and there was a lot of things where like people are going, okay, this team is in 12th place if they don't sign more players, or someone's going like they're 6th if they sign more players, but if not, they're going to finish last. And I feel like that's even though I acknowledge the risks the organization is taking, it's still like an extremely kind of unfair way, and I think it's just a disservice to the core of the team, because the core of the team features like so much individual talent, so much like championship pedigree that it's a little bit silly, I think, to go like, oh, because the team doesn't have bench players, they're automatically going to be last place. From my perspective, working from those expectations is completely fine, but I just think like it's a little bit silly because you're just discrediting like a lot of really, really skilled players.
Yeah, and it's Reddit, right? So obviously everyone's going to be like, oh, well, they're missing their bench players. How are they going to play if someone sprains a pinky? It's like, okay, well, you can't play more than 7, or you can't play more than 6 people in a game. So like, what is it? Like, what is it? And like, how often have we seen people get hurt or sick? And obviously for a whole season, sure, but I agree that is a little silly to discredit. I think the biggest thing is like people just think that the roster's not done. And then maybe that leads them to jump to conclusions. But I don't know. I can't think like Reddit thinks. That's just I'll go insane if I start doing that. But shifting the focus a little bit, obviously last weekend was the Overwatch World Cup, and we saw from at least from our perspective, a very good and a very close Overwatch World Cup. A lot of the regions kind of leveling up to the point where almost every single match that was played was a good one. So with the different regions kind of leveling up, do you foresee a lot of mixing and matching of players? Maybe teams that have EU and NA and Korean and Chinese players. And what are your thoughts on the region mixing?
I think that it can certainly work, but you're also you have to kind of have the right player, because there are, like, for instance, Koreans. There are those Koreans who are like they're really uncomfortable outside of a Korean environment. There's been a lot of guys who you've heard about like turning down offers because they want to be with like a full Korean team. I think in the future, as the infrastructure in the Overwatch League grows and like the coaching staff grows for all the teams, I think integrating these talents will become a lot easier. But that being said, like there are a lot of players who some are obviously easier to integrate, like a guy like Mickey. He kind of fit in seamlessly into Envious, right? Because he has that kind of a personality. But then, there are other regions where that might not be the case. You might have to teach a player English. He needs to like, come out of his shell and maybe like just really fit the system. So you always have to consider when you're building your team is, bringing in this player, how many resources we're going to have to pour into like trying to fit him in. Is the individual skill worth it, like in the long run? Because at the end of the day, you do want to build like a product that's going to last for a long time. You want to contend for a title for a long time. So I definitely feel like it's worth investing in those players. You just have to be mindful about the resources.
Yeah, would it be possible? I've never met him, but I can't imagine it would be possible to not like Mickey and get along with Mickey. Like, he just seems like the most amiable, like, nice guy ever. So yeah, I think it'll be exciting to see them kind of get mixed up a little bit more in the future here with all these teams. But looking at the Overwatch League, and we just got like about 700 tons of information dumped on us at BlizzCon, and some of that information was the team schedules, and that's not something that you normally have, right? Like, you don't normally get the next 6 months or however many months of opponents lined up in a row for you. So is this going to be a different thing for you guys? Do you plan on making game plans for each individual team each different week? Because that's kind of how things are done in traditional sports, and that's the world we come from. So, it's always been a thought in our minds here is how people will game plan for an opponent in Overwatch.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, like you can see what they're doing. They're trying to like emulate real American sports with like a regular season, a long regular season, and the playoffs. So I really like the format, by the way. Like in terms of like having like sort of 4 mini seasons and then having big playoffs, you're always incentivizing winning regardless of what period of the season you're in. In terms of like having the schedule available to yourself is it's super valuable. I mean, like it makes my job a lot easier because I know exactly, I can prepare like several weeks in advance. I can see, okay, we're going to play these guys in 2 weeks. I can keep an extra eye on them and like really, then when I'm actually going in deep on like breaking down film on them, I'm already going to have like a little backlog that I have on them. So, it's going to be, it certainly helps me. And I mean, again, it's something that they've just done to try and emulate sports, and I like it.
Well, my next question here, you may have kind of already answered a little bit, but we were curious if there was any consideration. You'd probably have to more tell us if you heard talk of any consideration of it. Was put into drastically altering the Misfits roster, like not only bringing in 3 of the guys or anything like that. Was that something that was really considered, or was the organization very set in keeping their roster intact?
Do you mean between contenders and? Going
into the league, yeah.
No, not really. I mean, we were very happy with how the lineup performed throughout the season. I mean, we had a monster of a regular season. Obviously, we faltered a little bit at the playoffs, but I mean, there were reasons for that, and those reasons don't detract from anytime you're going to win a tournament or win a title, like a lot of things have to go your way and fall into place. People are. You can't discredit a team like Gigante. They're an incredible team. So again, like there are reasons, and then those reasons don't make me detract from the core of this team, and they don't make me lose trust in what this core can accomplish whatsoever. So not really. I mean, like it's just, to me, it's a very well-rounded roster because we have 2 support players who can literally play anything. I mean, Zebos has played 4 different roles during ever since beta, alongside his shot calling, which is incredible. Zupa is probably one of the most gifted, mechanically one of the most gifted players on the team, and not even like on the supports, but in general. Logic, who is just an insane hit scan. Tefik, who can play anything. Manhattan, who is a tier 1 off tank and can flex on any hit scans, and Swoosh, who people are talking about his Reinhardt, but I mean I've seen it firsthand. His Reinhardt go from having never played it to where it is now, where I work closely with him one-on-one to try and improve it. And like the guy's a sponge. I mean, he's the most coachable player I've ever worked with. There's literally no ego in that guy. He just wants to get better. So you look across the roster, and I'm just comfortable with the core that we have, because I don't see like a meta shift really breaking us like I've seen it happen to teams in the past. So even though we don't have subs, I'm fairly confident that at least like in the early parts of the season, we're going to be able to survive kind of any meta shift. So yeah, I don't think there was like, everyone was kind of as soon as we saw how well we performed in the regular season, I think it was clear that we're going to go with this core.
All right, and you've already kind of answered the first half of this one, so I'll have to edit these on the fly here. But you're a one-man coaching staff right now, but in a perfect world where money was no issue and the organization was willing to spend and go get whoever, how many coaches would you have? Like, what would be the layout of your coaching staff underneath you?
Well, I mean, like, yeah, you can like go into like titles and stuff, but I think like most important thing, like when you're building a coaching staff, is just have like smart Overwatch people, like people who actually understand the game at a really high level and are like versatile in what they can do. So you're not just bringing up one guy to do one thing. But ideally, I guess you'd have maybe 2-3 more people, so that I, as a head coach, can like delegate the responsibilities and really focus on what's the most important, and then have maybe one guy handling like the scouting for the team, so he's compiling like reports that I can go through quickly and then like pick and choose what's the most important thing to like bring to the team. Someone who's also like sitting in on the scrims and watching them and like going through the VODs, because you know, it's like Overwatch is a chaotic game, so it's like hard to spot. Like when I'm watching games, there's a lot of situations where like I'm recording something live, and then as soon as the fight is over, I'm going back and watching that same fight again while something else is going on because I need to take a note on that. So like it's very easy to miss stuff when you're on your own. So you know, you can always have more people. But I mean, yeah, maybe two to three more guys who, you know, kind of an assistant coach, and then a scout / analyst is probably optimal.
Yeah, I think that's kind of what we've been hearing a lot of. I mean, I think it's the type of thing where, like, ideally you'd love to be able to do all that yourself, but like you said, we're all kind of human, and you can only turn so many knobs at a time and still get the job done effectively. So I know you've kind of mentioned that this really isn't an issue for the current roster, but maybe in bringing on new players in the future, you know, how difficult do you think it's going to be to manage egos and keep all of the players happy, you know, with like game time and whatnot and players coming in? Obviously, you guys have a very solid core of 6. If you brought on, you know, one to 3 other guys, you know, how difficult do you imagine that being to keep their egos and whatnot in check?
I mean, the most important thing I think is just like to, again, when you're bringing in a player, you're considering how well he fits. So you don't want someone like comes in with like a massive ego and he's gonna put that ego in front of the team. You know, we have players who are extremely accomplished and they have egos, but they never, you know, jeopardize the success of the team because of that. They can put that aside. They listen to reasoning, and we, you know, any arguments we might have, they're always healthy. You know, there's nothing that is just like unreasonable. So, you know, I've been lucky enough to deal with players who are very reasonable, and you know, they just want to learn, they want to get better. And I think when we're talking about bringing in new players, I mean, yeah, that like you have to consider all those things. You have to consider, okay, is this player going to be happy with maybe playing 1 out of 4 maps, or maybe playing 1 map every other week, and accept that role. You know, you have to like really, when you're recruiting, you have to talk to him and see whether he accepts that role. Because again, like to me, it's the most important thing is like to have stability in a team, to have you know, the culture, everyone buying into like, okay, this is my role, I'm going to do it to the best of my ability, and you know, I'm not going to like sulk, or you know, I'm here for the team. And that's why I think like a lot of teams that are like bringing in 12-man rosters, I feel like that can be almost detrimental, because now you're dealing with so many individuals, and it's you can see like the 12th guy on the bench, maybe he's sitting there secretly thinking, well, you know, he doesn't maybe want his team to lose, but he wants the player in his position to not do as well, so that he gets a shot. So, and then like then it just becomes like very conflicting kind of attitudes within the team, and it's I think it's very hard to manage. I mean, if you're going to go for a 12-man roster, I think you have to have 4 to 5 kind of young guys who are happy not playing much. They're just there to like learn and develop as players, who you can like help build for the future. But yeah, I think you just have to do your due diligence and make sure that, you know, you're not just, okay, oh, this guy's insane, let's bring him in. Like, take everything into consideration. Is he coachable? Is he gonna accept his role? Is he, you know, does he bring something to the table that the other players don't? Like, do we actually envision like, okay, in these compositions we're gonna run you instead of this player because we feel like you can do this? You know, all these things I think have to be addressed before you bring in a player, and then like managing the roster afterwards, it's going to be significantly easier.
For sure. I mean, I remember feeling that way when I played in high school, where it's like, okay, I'm the younger guy coming up, and I really didn't see the floor that much, but I always knew, like, all these guys know, at least in high school, it's like, okay, I'm going to put the time in now, I'm going to work to make everyone better, and then when it's my time, it's my time. Now, like, if you bring on a 12-man roster, it's not like, okay, well, next year these guys graduate and I'm going to have my spot. It's like, they could be playing for who knows how long. Like, as long as they're good, they're going to keep playing. So, yeah, it's definitely interesting. I think that is definitely a side that people, at least on Reddit, are not thinking of, because it's like, oh, well, if we just combine the top 2 rosters in Korea, it's going to be a super team. Yeah, it's like, that doesn't even make sense at all. Like, you can't play 2 teams at the same time. So definitely. I
mean, they have so much talent that, you know, and they have the core of the GC Busan team, so that
sure.
might just work. But like in general, yeah.
it might work because it's those two teams, not anything
Yeah.
inherently about having 12 people.
Exactly.
On the
Exactly.
team. So one question we've been asking the coaches we've been having on is kind of how you feel the coaching role is going to be used and taken in Overwatch League. So in traditional sports, we see a very established coaching role where like the coach has the final say. The coach is making the ultimate decisions, and really the players are going to follow the coach, you know, for better or for worse. And at the end of the day, like if a team isn't producing, it's kind of on the coach. You know, do you feel that Overwatch League is going to be kind of like that, or do you think there's going to be a variance and a difference from maybe traditional sports coaching?
I think it's going to be like somewhere in the middle, where I feel like I really like what Blizzard are going to be doing with the coaching, because like the worst thing for me was like during the regular season, on game day, like you're doing everything to prepare your players, but then when it's game day, when they're about to go into the game, it's like, okay, guys, good luck. I'm letting you go, and then you're watching the stream and you're hoping everything goes fine because you're watching on delay. Like it's impossible to like actually coach and see what's going on. And that was like the worst feeling. Whereas like at the Contenders Finals, we actually got to sit on the comms and like watch the tournament feed, which was like a step up because I could actually step in between maps. I had a headset on, so my headset would unmute between maps, and that's when I could actually talk, give feedback, whether it's on the previous map or, you know, okay, let's focus on these things. I have notes on these on this team on this particular map, so remember to do these things. You can be a lot more involved. You can be a lot more impactful. I think what the plan is now is that we're actually going to be able to, as coaches, sit in on the server and listen to the comms. Like I won't be able to talk unless like it's between maps again. So again, like we're gonna be able to spot a lot more, because like watching the tournament feed, you're still missing a lot of stuff. But if you're actually watching everything on a free cam, then like the feedback you can give your teams and the adjustments you can make on the fly between maps are gonna be a lot faster. But yeah, so I think that like that's a decent balance, because like I don't think coaches should be able to talk like mid game, because it's such a chaotic. Like the game is just such a chaotic nature in itself, and I feel like just having your coach step in between maps makes it so that, you know, every team has to have like a strong leader, strong leadership in the game. So like players like Zebosai, who's arguably the best in-game leader in the West, that's where his value is, because he, you know, anytime my microphone gets muted, I know that I can trust Zebosai to carry out the game plan and remind the guys and be the calm presence, you know, and control the pace of the game. So, yeah, I feel like, you know, Overwatch is going to be somewhere in the middle, where coaches are going to be very involved, but it's still a case of where like the players are a little bit on their own when they're actually inside the game, which I think is fine considering how the game works.
Yeah, we see a kind of a similar structure in a lot of other sports too. Like the mic cuts off in football before before the play actually starts, right? They can talk in between plays, but not actually during the live action itself. Is there anything else about coaching that you'd like to see kind of unlocked? Maybe anything you think that would benefit you that Blizzard can do for you for the Overwatch League?
Honestly, I just like, because all these things I was worried about, like going into the Contenders Finals, and then I talked with Blizzard people like the first day on Contenders, and they were telling me all of these things. I'm like, wow, this is like what I hoped for and a little bit more. The fact that I can actually sit in on the server and spectate whoever I want and actually see, okay, actually these guys are, you know, they're working real hard on the flank. They're sending both their flankers. Let's make sure we control that, because it's like a style of play that we can exploit that we've perhaps not seen, and it's caught us off guard. And these little things that I cannot spot if I'm like on the tournament feed and I'm just watching a tracer duel the whole time. I'm here in the comms, but I don't really see what's going on. So honestly, I feel like, you know, the coaching stuff is going to be in a very good place. It's great that Blizzard's actually thought about these things and are putting that into place. So yeah, I'm very happy with that.
Yeah, and kind of speaking about things that Blizzard has put into place based on feedback, we got the new spectator mode for Overwatch World Cup. Can you give us your thoughts on those? I know a lot of people have been saying that this is really kind of great. I haven't really heard anything negative about them, but What are your thoughts on the new spectator mode and those new features? And do you know if those tools are going to be available to you when you're going through film for your team?
I'm not entirely sure whether I'm gonna have access to that. Like when I'm going through, I'd love to like having like overviews and like recordings and everything. But we'll see whether that's gonna be available. But in terms of like the broadcast, I think it's awesome because I mean, like I've been playing professionally since beta, and I've watched countless and played countless of hours of Overwatch, and I was still at a place like without the like the recent upgrades where. To watch Overwatch, I had to like really concentrate. Like if I'm gonna really watch and enjoy like a game of Overwatch, I have to sit and like I have to look at the ults. I have to like think about all these things, and you have to like give it like 100% of your attention. So anything that like alleviates from that is great, and I feel like the changes that they've made are certainly going to do that. I think during the World Cup it got off like a little bit on the wrong foot with like the Sweden UK game. I was like, what is going on? Like I can't see anything because it was like light blue and white, like everything's blending together. There's Trace that goes next to a wall and he just like blends in like camouflage. But then the next game immediately I'm like, okay, wow, I think it was Australia that were green.
Yeah,
and then,
they're green.
Yeah, and you immediately saw like the contrast and like, okay, it's so much easier to follow. Like there are like little things that I'd like to swap around, like in terms of, like the ultimates being more visible, because I still had to like look really closely to like see the like the ult economy of each team. Like I had to go through every single character like between the fight. It would be better if I could just like glance and see, okay, these guys have these ults. But I think it's like moving in the right direction for sure. It's a lot easier to watch.
Similar question, but I just want to ask very specifically about timeouts. How do you imagine those being used, and how would you like to use them or be able to use them in Overwatch League?
Well, I don't think it's going to be fair to like use them actually when you're mid round, because like again the game is so fast paced. Like it's like from fight to fight to fight. Like as soon as the fight is over, you're all preparing for that. So, okay, what ultimates do they have? Where are we going to hold? Are we going to pressure here? What's the game plan for next fight? Like it's always moving so quickly that like pausing to break momentum, like it would be just awful. So I feel like maybe having like pauses where you can. Like in between halves where you can like pause and go through something. I think that would be good. And maybe you have like, in a set of 4 maps, you have like 2 or 3 pauses of like a minute. Because I mean, there are a lot of scenarios where like, say you're playing Moira, both teams capture in like 3 minutes. So, and both teams still have time. Like that would be a very valuable spot where you go, you pause for a minute and get, okay, these guys are doing something that we weren't expecting and it caught us off guard. Let's try this to counter, and then the players can do that, and you adjust quickly, and then your second defense is going to be a lot better than your first. So, yeah, I feel like in between halves, it would be nice to have like timeouts, but obviously not too many, because you don't want to break up the action and slow down the game even more. You already have like a minute there, but if you could have, as a coach, maybe 1 or 2 timeouts in a set, that would be good, I think.
Yeah, I think that's kind of the consensus we've had a lot. I mean, it would definitely be awful if you could be like in the middle of a team fight and just be like, okay, timeout. Who has ult here? Okay, they have all, and just to kind of like freeze the kicker type of thing, where it's like, okay, well, he's about to pull off a really awesome Genji blade. It's like, okay, pause. Yeah. And although it's
just like you have to like. I find so much value in like teams who are able to adapt quickly, like on the fly, because that's what the game is about. Like a lot of times, someone brings out something surprising. How fast are you going to be encountering that? Okay, our composition that we've practiced here isn't working. Are we just going to tunnel on that, or are we going to immediately swap something and adapt? And that's going to win us the map. So there's so much value in that. And when you let teams just like settle down and really think about it, then like you remove that skill from the game, really.
Yeah, I mean, if you could do that in the World Cup, like how fast does the team call timeout when we see the Bastion comps on Junkertown and go, hold on, you caught us with our pants down here. We're calling a timeout. We're gonna stop this right now. But no, it ended up really kind of being. I mean, the timeouts would really detract from a moment like that for sure.
Yeah.
So I agree with you wholeheartedly. We've asked this question a couple of times, and we've actually gotten a pretty wide variety of answers, so we'll give you this one too. How do you feel about maybe one trick is not a good word, but maybe like a specialist. So maybe someone who's a specialist in Doomfist and a couple other heroes. Like, what are your thoughts on a player like that playing in Overwatch League or playing on an Overwatch League team?
I think like in certain metas that can work. Like if like we had a very stagnant meta, like the 2-2 meta now, where you have to have a tracer or you're not gonna be able to compete, or you have to have a Genji or you're not gonna be able to compete. So I think like in stagnant metas where there's not a lot of like variance in what you play, that can be valuable. But in general, I feel like you have to have at least 2 to 3 heroes in your hero pool that to actually like keep your opponents guessing. And that's the same reason like what I see like I saw a lot of people like go, oh, why aren't Misfits or Mayhem bringing in another like Reinhardt specialist? But it's like I think that's like so counterproductive, because you're basically saying like the main tank can pick one out of 2 heroes in the meta, and if you let your opponents know, okay, this guy's gonna play this guy's gonna play this, so anytime we sub this guy in, that we're going to play a slow Reinhardt comp, you immediately know how to counter us. I think it's like completely counterproductive. So I feel like everyone has to kind of have like 2 to 3 heroes that they're proficient at in their hero pool. So it's like you look at a team like MVS, anytime they would sub in Seagull during contenders, it was like, okay, he might play Pharah, but he also might play Junkrat, and he also can actually flex onto the D.Va on this certain point if that's the optimal thing, before flexing onto his other pick. So you knew that they're going to play a different style than you would like with Mickey, but you still didn't know exactly what they're going to play. So I feel like for to keep your opponents guessing, you kind of have to add a little bit more to your arsenal.
Well, I've just got a couple here to kind of wrap us up here, Mineral, but now that we've got all the rosters, can you tell us who you think, are there any names that were very surprising to you on the free agents list? People maybe you think are of OWL talent but never found a way onto a roster?
Well, I'm probably just gonna miss a bunch of names because I haven't thought about this. But I mean, I think like the players that like you get off the top of your head are like the rogue guys, right? Like AKM players like that. I think those guys are kind of like screwed over a little bit by the fact that they didn't know if they were going to be in the league or not, and they get released at a very late time where like a lot of teams already have rosters, so they already have players in those positions, and it's kind of like awkward. But yeah, I mean those guys like jump off. Those are the guys that jump like off the top of my head. Let me think. I mean, I think a lot of really good players are in it. I mean, there's like some like United. I think like the fact that like all Giganti guys aren't in the Overwatch League is a little bit silly. Like all those guys are absolutely Overwatch League quality. Like Zappis is a great player, flexible, can like really like he can be like really the gel of like he can really put a team together and be kind of like a rock in the back as an off tank and as a flex player. Yeah, I think. Yeah, those are like the United guys as well. A lot of them are like really good and could definitely fit in rosters. But I mean, a lot of these rosters are stacked as well. I mean, and 3 of the teams are like full Koreans as well. So again, you have 9 teams. So if you're playing like a specific support role or something, like you have 9 jobs in the world that you're essentially competing for. Yeah. I mean, it's. I think a lot of those guys are going to get in if there's like expansion teams or whatever. But yeah, it's a shame they're not in right now.
Well, yeah, we'll spare you getting any more specific than that, so you don't get yourself in trouble by leaving off any of your friends.
Left off Defran because they're signing Defran. What?
We talked about Defran. I mean,
he's like, not a free agent anymore. Wink, wink. Nudge.
Now, going into the preseason here, it's kind of an interesting scenario, right? When we look at traditional sports, you'd never play your starting quarterback for very long in the preseason for fear that he gets hurt and you lose access to him. That's less of an issue here in esports. So how would you imagine teams are going to be approaching the preseason? Do you think they'll be hiding their rosters, hiding their compositions? What are they going to withhold and what are they going to show us here in the preseason?
I mean, obviously, like all the teams are gonna, try hard and stuff. You want to come off like that's gonna be your first impression as a team, like for a lot of these teams. So you wanna leave a good first impression. But at the same time, I feel like a lot of the teams are gonna be like no one's gonna have practiced a ton. I know like for a fact that a lot of the teams are not practicing right now. For us, like a lot of our players, like the Swedish core, they haven't had a break since forever, because as soon as we stopped scrimming, like after contenders, they went for this, to practice with the Swedish guys, so they need a little time off. And a lot of the teams are like, they haven't even gotten their players there yet. A lot of the Korean teams are still in Korea, so they haven't moved over. Everything's going to happen in like next couple of weeks. So I don't feel like we're going to see. I don't feel like we're going to actually be able to like draw any conclusions, because a lot of teams are going to be under practiced. A lot of it is going to be like improvising on the fly. I'm not sure which patch you are going to be on.
Right.
And again, I think the picture is going to look completely different when we get to like the regular season, because everyone's going to have like a solid month of like boot camping essentially to whip themselves into shape.
Well, and one more quick hitter right before we do let you go. We've got to ask, since it's so topical, how do you think Moira is going to shake things up in this metagame?
It's difficult to say. Like I've only went like on PTR and tested like her abilities a little bit. I need to like look at the numbers and stuff. I definitely think like she can, like the game really needed the support. I mean, that was like blatantly obvious. I don't know how effective she's going to be, or in which compositions. Again, you have to like experiment with that type of stuff. Like there's a lot of times when like there's an update and someone's nerfed, and you go, okay, this is going to work out like this, but then you're kind of overreacting a little bit. I definitely think she's going to be viable. I think she's going to be in certain compositions, whether she's and I mean that's healthy. That's what you want. Like you don't want like watching this Mercy meta is just awful.
Almost as bad as playing in that Mercy meta, to be honest.
Yeah, like it's dreadful. Everyone's in Mercy meta now. But yeah, I think I like what they've done with the kit. That she's got mobility. She's got that's kind of like a common denominator with all new characters now. Like everyone's mobile. Everyone's like high skill cap, which I think is good, because it leaves it opens up for all these moments in professional games where players take that character to the maximum of its abilities, and then they do some insane stuff. I think it's always nice when you have a high skill cap character. So yeah, I think she's probably going to be viable, but we'll see how viable.
Well, that basically wraps up our conversation here. I will let Blevins close it out officially, but I will steal the one part he usually does and just ask you if you have any shout outs or anything. You've got the floor and the mic to yourself for a minute or two here if you want, so feel free to give any shout outs you want.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, just shout out to Florida Mayhem and our players. I mean, again, a lot of people are kind of underestimating us. We're flying a little bit under the radar, which is good. But at the same time, like for the fans that we have, I think it's we're going to do our best to make you guys proud. I believe firmly that this core can. It's going to be a marathon of a season. We're not looking to come in and dominate from the get-go. A lot of the teams are going to have maybe a little bit of a head start, but a lot of things can change in 6 months. The season starts in January and ends in like June or July, right?
Yep.
So we're talking 40 games. We're talking probably like 160 plus maps of Overwatch, and we've seen like dynasties or teams that we can consider like dynasties rise and fall in less time than that. So we're just gonna walk into the season with the mindset of doing everything we can to improve, and we're gonna try and make sure that we peak go into the playoffs, and I feel like we can make a lot of noise when we get there. So yeah, just thank you for the support, everyone, and we hope to make you proud.
Yeah, I mean, one does not simply vote or root against the Plupster. Like, how can you? No. Like, how could you? But yeah.
No, under the begging portion of the.
Oh yeah, no. So we had Logix on the show a while ago, and I told him to send a personal message to Vic that he needs to come on the show because he's been my favorite player since literally like day 2 of Overwatch. So if you can just pass that message along to him, it will be at least one dream come true for me.
If Vic told you a story about the lunatic at the World Cup, not this year but last year, that was screaming Pluppy lives at him from the stand. Like, that was the Blevins. So we really, really want to get him on. I got to talk to my favorite player, so we want to try to get Blevins to get to have his conversation with Tavik. So anything you could do to help us out would definitely be appreciated.
I'll see what I can do, but I can't promise anything when it comes to Tavik.
He's like,
Tavik's his own man.
He's like, he's that guy I have a restraining order against, right? Okay, yeah. That is actually going to be it. Mineral, again, thank you from the bottom of our hearts for coming on. Really appreciate it. A lot of really awesome insights to the Florida Mayhem and to Overwatch League in general. And I will award you with the award of having survived the high noon hot seat. It's really not that hard to do, but you did a great job doing it. But guys, that is going to be it. Again, huge shout outs to Mineral, huge shout outs to Florida Mayhem for doing this interview. Make sure you guys root them on this season. They do have the greatest Overwatch player of all time, the Plupster. Who is Tavik for those new schoolers who weren't watching back in closed beta. But that is going to be it, guys. All of our links and everything are going to be at highnoonpodcast.com. Check that out. Check out all the we'll have all of Minerals stuff and all the Florida Mayhem stuff on Twitter, so check that out. And that's going to be it. So for Mineral and for Deathblow, I am the Blevins. And remember, guys, it's high noon.
Got his boots and he put on his hat. He threw the coin away that same day. It's in his past and he's not looking back. He says, finding mine now guides my way. He's not good, but he sure ain't bad. He'll make amends for the sins that he has. He says, I'll change